This is your interview, and you haven't had a word in edgewise.
I knew who to call.
And Don was wondering why he had been invited.
Well, we've covered Art. Now, Ella.
Ella was the baby of the Thompson
That's right.
family. And one distinction, Auntie Dora was always a blonde. Mother was darker than you, and Ella had reddish hair.
Oh, wow.
3 daughters. Ella married a Dutchman, a tall, very good-looking Dutchman from Vanderhoof, up Canada way, and Admirals and Admiralstons. They immigrated to Whidbey Island. I'm sure it must have been Canada and Point Roberts where Ella met him. They had 3 children, Helen being the eldest. Janice still comes every year down. She's very good at the cemetery. She's very good for everything. And Bill, their son, was 6'4", handsome young man, but he died very young. I think his son was 12. And I don't know why he died. Cancer.
Yeah. And the saddest thing that happened to that family was that Janice was a twin, and she was the only one that survived. And I can still remember, for some reason, I was working at the cannery, and Len came down and told us that Ella would be coming home with only 1 daughter.
Oh, no.
And that was very traumatic. But Leonard was quite serious compared to the rest of the. I mean, he was a good-humored and industrious.
Very hard woodsman.
Yeah. But he was more. I guess he was more a Dutchman.
I'm sorry.
And he used to sell firewood.
Had stacks and stacks of fire.
And as a matter of fact, what's the name of the woman who's living on the beach in South Beach, the one who's now 90?
Mary Irving?
Mary Irving's father owned a cottage on the stilts, on the hill, just in front of Mads Thompson's place. And Mary Irving's mother and father were always quite elderly, in my memory. And they used to buy their firewood from Len. And so when Len was up north, Johnny and I had the job of delivering the firewood by wheelbarrow.
Oh.
And
You might as well have carried it 1 stick at a time.
Darnborough was there. Mary Irving's maiden name was Darnborough. And this thing was on stilts, and there'd be about 8 or 10 stairs up to the main floor. And I remember having a contract with them. I had to go twice a week and pump water right behind Jerry and Richard's place. Pump water into the buckets and carry them up and put them on the counter, because they had a lot of trouble getting up and down stairs. This was when they were getting old. And but Len was a good friend of Darnborough. And then there was a Dr. Burwell who lived in the cottage next to where Mrs. Kuntz Rothfeder is.
Okay. On the corner of, or the T of.
Well, the house, the Russell house that was there, Burwell bought the replacement house, and Dr. Burwell and Lynn were very close friends, and I think Lynn looked after the place when Burwell wasn't there.
Yeah.
But and Lynn, he wasn't a common drinker. He liked Scotch whiskey, and so he would go down and visit with Burwell, and they used to have some wonderful. And I think they even played chess together.
Great pinochle players too.
Yeah,
Oh,
but they were very good friends. And Len was always there for anybody who needed a hand. He was a wonderful guy. And Helen, their oldest kid, married a fellow named Fenwick. How do you like that? And then they moved to northern Vancouver Island, where he worked for a lumber company.
Pulp mill.
Pulp mill, that's right.
Uh-oh.
And Fenwick died.
Young. Very
Yeah,
young.
but they had what, 2 kids?
3.
3 daughters.
2 daughters, then the last
Okay,
one
you
is
see?
son.
We're getting there. And Helen comes up from time every summer. with
Yes.
Oh,
us.
okay. She comes to the
And-
cabin.
Janice, the other daughter, married my wife's cousin, and they lived in Kamloops. And Janice, my wife's cousin Jimmy, had been married and had several children, 4 or 5, and his wife up and walked out and decided she didn't want to raise kids anymore.
Didn't want to have 5 kids.
And so Janice moved in and put up with Jimmy, and that was a challenge because Jimmy was interesting, really good-hearted guy, but he wanted to be a rancher, and they had a place in Barrier, which is north of Kamloops. Anyway, he finally gave up on the farm, or it gave up on him, and they lived in Kamloops, and Jim went to work driving these vehicles for a pulp mill, or, yeah, I think it was, yeah. Anyway, they split, then they got back together, and every time I would meet either one of them, I'd say, well, is it on or off this week? And I think they got along better after they divorced. But Janice looked after those kids and
She
still acts as their,
Loves them
Yeah.
dearly.
yeah,
Loves,
they
she's,
were,
in fact, in Australia with the one, I know her mama's name, her daughter, who, can't think of it, but
Sorry.
anyhow, that's where she is, in Australia with one of Jim's
daughters,
granddaughters,
yeah, well,
grandson.
I can't give you the details, because I was the godfather of one of those girls, and I can't remember which one it was. And I've always felt guilty, but there's one who lives out in Chilliwack, who's a real sweetie.
Yes, that's one Janice is very close with.
Yeah.
That's the mama of the girl in Australia.
Oh, really? Yeah, I think that may be my goddaughter, but I
And
better be
she-
careful.
She has a very giving husband too.
That's right.
They
He-
came down and cleaned my trailer all outside, and Janice washed the windows. And
He's a paramedic,
yes,
yeah, yeah. And anyway, that's, and Billy moved to, not Vancouver, Washington, but the one over next door.
yes,
Pulp
where the
mill?
pulp mill is.
Yeah, and he worked in the pulp mill down
Yes.
there, but their health hasn't been that good, really.
No, Helen now has Alzheimer's badly, and Janice is still gun ho.
Yeah,
But Bill, I in my thought think the pulp mills are should be looked into, because Bill was fine until he started
Yeah.
there, and then it's long
Well,
since
it's
never
same
smoked.
with Helen's husband, even though he was an executive, he was mixed up in it, and his health went all to pieces too. But those are all of Virginia's cousins. Well, Phyllis Culp, she was a very successful nurse, and her husband was at our reunion last September. Very hair-deprived individual.
Yes, he's one of the most loving in-law that a person could get.
That's right. He's
And,
a really nice guy, but baller in the cue ball. Makes
Watch
me
it.
look
I was
hairy.
gonna say, John, I'd be careful. You're venturing in the wrong location there.
But he has been for a long time. Anyway, what's is
Sarabian.
Sarabian is his
Oh.
last name.
Okay, that's.
And
I remember that. Now.
he was there with Lois, and Lois, of course.
Phyllis.
No, that's Phyllis's husband is Sarabian, but Lois, who was married twice. I noticed when Dora did the history of the Culp family, she never bothered to mention the first husband for some.
While they were together, he was very important, but afterwards, and he'd done her wrong, And Lois was truly in love with I can't think of his name.
Oh,
And now they get along fine.
the,
Yes, he comes down to, like when Jerry's son was killed by
Right.
lightning, he was down. And, but Lois married a hard-working real estate man who was so good to the whole family. All of us were important to him. And they had 4. Jerry was born to the first husband, so he has dual citizenship. And then came Joanne, then came Barbara, and then came Danny. And they're all quite successful kids, not rich or anything, but happy and doing well. Phyllis had 3 daughters, snow white blondes, and very happy-go-lucky. And I think that makes the whole family, doesn't it?
what was Jerry's last name?
Meikle. Oh,
No, that's
yeah. I can't think.
it's a very well-known Ladner family. Anyway,
Handsome, big fellow.
and they lived for a while up at on the Sunshine Coast. He had some kind of bowling alley or something?
A what?
A bowling alley, wasn't
Not that I know of.
it? I think that was after they split.
Oh,
So that takes care of the Culps?
Bertram.
Bertram, yes.
Wilson.
Bertram Wilson.
And Lois's family starts on page 55 there.
Yeah, that's right, Bert Wilson. And the
Yep.
Wilsons are still fairly prominent in the library.
Oh. He was a very nice man, but he had a gambling problem.
Yeah,
And gambling usually goes on all night. And Lois was from quite a sheltered family. Here's Ella's husband, a handsome Dutchman, hard-working man, made a good living,
Looks very
And-
determined.
very determined. And he took, I don't know if you were ever on his trips, but I think it was my girls, Lois's kids, mainly Peggy and Aggie Thompson, Uncle Harry's daughter. They'd follow him to the woods, and so they didn't get too close to his house or anything. He'd set them up on a big pile of wood already stacked, and then along come Harry's dog, and he'd sit right beside him up there, all watching Len do the wood. So that shows you what kind of great life we had. There's the redhead right there. That's her graduation picture. Phyllis married John Sarabian in California. She was head of nursing at in California. Pediatrics, yes. And she died untimely. She was going down. Their home in Charlotte, Washington, had a downstairs where the washer and dryer was, and they were always talking about going to put it up. And she was going down these steps with no railings, and fell on her head and died.
Oh, gee, that's sad.
Now we did, Dick was married late in life, Dick Thompson, my Uncle Harry.
Well, you forgot to say very much about Dorothy.
Oh, no, we didn't.
No, and Dorothy and Robert, he was a Thompson.
Not related until he married Dorothy.
And he started courting Dorothy when he was still in high school.
Grade school.
Great.
Grade school.
6th grade.
Oh,
And I can
so it was
remember him coming over. He used to hitchhike
From Blaine to Port
either by
Royce.
boat or by truck from Blaine. And I can remember Johnny and I were raising hell down the beach one day, and here comes Robert. And he had a box of chocolates in his hand.
You told me this.
Yeah. And he said, I need a hand. What for? Well, I got to wrap this up.
Oh, yes, you too.
I said, okay, well, sure, we'll give you a hand. Do we get to eat any? No, don't you open that box. So we wrapped it up, and what are you going to do with it? I'm going to give it to Dorothy. What? What do you want to give chocolates to Dorothy for? He said, someday you'll understand. And off he went climbing up the hill.
They were a true love story.
Yeah.
He was the best man. And Dorothy was a little bit stern, but they were happy.
No, Dorothy was always sweet and gentle. She and I used to go roller skating together when Robert wasn't around. Anyway.
Dorothy ended up with, what was wrong with the bone? Osteoarthritis.
Anyway.
Had a whole kneecap taken out.
Oh,
And a steel plate put in and a pin.
She would
down.
only have been, what, 15, 14?
Yeah, 13.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's young to have a knee replacement.
Yeah.
And-
And so she had this gimpy leg.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But she got on roller skates.
And about 4 years prior to that, she got too close to a beach fire down on the beach. Mother and Daddy walked up a little bit, and the style of the day was beach pajamas, and with those wide legs, and she was probably 7, and she let up the first scream, and Daddy was back, and just like that, but the tide was out, so I had to roll her in sand, and that took a lot to heal. Then she had the second surgery on her knee. Then she was, after she married Robert for about a year, she developed some kind of tubercular, but she was pregnant at the same time. So they put her to bed for the full 9 months. And when she delivered Kathy, a month later, there was no more tuberculosis that they could find.
Wow.
She's,
A walking miracle.
and every time you'd see her, the smile was as big as can be, and you'd ask her how she was. I'm just fine. And Robert was injured seriously in 1976. He was a Bellingham City fireman, and he worked off the job just to make extra money. And they were moving with one of the moving vans a home, contents for this company. And they were on the second floor, and it was a balcony up just a wee bit, and they handed a mattress up over to the two guys. Robert was one. The other fella stepped in the door. He picked up the mattress, and it moved Robert back, and he fell. It broke his back, and he was paralyzed from here down for the rest of his life.
Wow.
He had lots of complications the later part of this, but they were a true love story. He was, Daddy was just about wild. He could never keep track of Robert when he was coming, when he was going. And Robert was so determined that he was going to keep Dorothy in his sight. And then my brother Johnny, and he was a spirited boy. A very spirited boy, but he had...
How would you define that, Dawn? Since you were more friendly than sibling.
Oh, I can tell you, hair raisers.
Okay.
One time Daddy had bought a 1942 brand new Chevrolet.
Uh-oh.
And Daddy was gone somewhere in the old truck. And Johnny and I think Larry Sand and Pudge, Helge Norman, decided they're gone. We'll just take a little cruise down the hill and around the front of the water, come back up the hill, backfiring all the way, just pumping it so that it'd backfire. He hit the hillside. So Daddy had to know. That was the hardest thing Johnny ever had to do, just tell Daddy that his brand new Chev was wrecked. But that was, I think that was probably the worst wreck. He never hurt anybody else. Or Johnny grew up when little Johnny was in high school. He cold turkey quit drinking. And Blanche had developed cancer, and they just built a home on the hill, on the waterfront, and she used to say, I truly think I'm on holiday. Every day I wake up and look out at the water. It's so beautiful. Johnny and Blanche had little Johnny. Brother Johnny was 6'1" or 2. Little Johnny was 6'4". Little Johnny had, Johnny 3 had a son, Lucas. He's 6'5". So the little Johnny went down 3 generations. Daddy wasn't a tall man. He was about 5'10".
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyhow, firstborn was Johnny the 3rd. Second one was Mary Jane Baker Anderson, who has Johnny's lot at the end of Bayview Drive, where you swam up to. And then came along Sister Jackie. And most everything could go wrong went wrong with her body. She had many surgeries, from the ankles that were turned the wrong way up to the knees, to hip replacement, second time on this side. And she is the brightest. Happy girl. She flies all over for Boeing Company.
Oh.
She's quite high up in the entry level.
Her last name is Waite?
Pardon?
What's her last name? Waite?
Wait.
Yeah.
Jackie Wait. They didn't have any children that long. So that's Johnny, Janie, Jackie, and then came Jimmy. He was the last one. And he's in the Point Roberts Cemetery at the age of 20. A very, very sweet boy, loving boy. But there again, him and his pals were drinkers, and they were rock star lovers, and they'd go to concerts in Seattle. And this one time, the Manning boys at Point Roberts, Chrissy's kids, 2 of them were with them, and 2 Fremont boys and Jimmy. And they got to the gate, and excuse me, Jimmy's ticket had a tear in it. Like, this is a flat ticket. It was torn like this. You don't get in unless it's a perfect ticket. So they turned him away. And the other kids looked at him, and he says, go ahead, go in. I'll go to the car, I'll go for a walk. He walked down the docks. Seattle docks are right close to the Kingdom. He apparently walked to the docks. The boys came out from the concert, and there was no Jimmy and no note. So they left his car and all got in the other car that came with him. And got home, and there was no Jimmy home. And Johnny thought, Jimmy is probably gone to stay overnight with one of the other kids. I happened to be over there in Mama's keep. I think Daddy was ill then. And Johnny was working somewhere on the west side with the backhoe. And I got a call from Seattle. They wanted to know who they were talking to. And they said, this is the Seattle Police Department.
Yeah. That's all you have to hear.
And he tried to live. He tore barnacles off trying to live. And from me to you, there was a ladder to look up. And it was dead at night. You didn't see it, dark.
He's fallen off.
They don't know if he was pushed or if he fell over. There was no sign of any more drinking because they found only a slight amount of liquor in his when they did the autopsy. That was a hard time.
And he was such a sweet kid, you know.
Oh, he was.
He worked for Nielsen's.
Yes.
And he just was so obliging and enthusiastic and always, really outgoing. And I don't think he wasn't nearly as wild as his father.
Oh, no. No
at the same age, or earlier, or later.
No.
You know, he was a lot like his mother, Blanche, who was a real sweetie.
Oh, she was from Steveston. And Johnny couldn't have picked a nicer girl.
The luckiest movie ever made.
Well, he was born into a good family too. That was a lucky move.
Yeah, but he didn't make that.
Oh.
And Blanche died at the age of 50 of cancer.
Oh.
Took her a long time, poor dear heart. And I don't know what was Johnny had to go away somewhere, so he asked Ray and I to keep Jimmy for the next 3 weeks to a month. And he was just a darling. And there again was the Freeman boys and one of the Manning boys. And they took, Jimmy's car, had a car at that time, and they were drinking a little bit. And they come around from the top side of Birch Bay down over the hill past the village to where it's the road, and then it's a beach and solid logs. They missed it, plowed into those logs, moved a lot. And there was no police report, no police coming. They all got out of it just fine.
How'd they get the car out of there?
That's the next day. Jimmy says, I have to talk to you at Virginia. I says, okay, you can talk to me anytime. You can tell me anything. He says, we wrecked the car a little bit. Do you suppose I could put it in your yard? And do you suppose you could pay for
A tow truck?
tow truck? Ray says, what happened, Jim? So he said, we were having fun until we missed the trigger curve and tore out some logs and stuff. Well, that was fine. We got it. I don't know how they lived. I really don't. And Ray says there's consequences, and especially after your mother's gone, your dad would just fall apart if he knew something like that happened. Well, we got a phone call from the Freeman boys, two boys, and he said to Ray, what do you plan on doing? And Ray says, what do you mean? He says, what kind of punishment are you going to give them so they don't forget this? Ray says, well, I have to think about it. And Ray was a big woodcutter. And about from here to that wall, he had 3 stacks, about my height. He made Jimmy put that old stack back against the wall, move that one to the middle, move this one to the outside. But the Freeman kids, the 2 boys, they lived on a farm, and it was probably 13 or 14 acres and a lot of cow pasture. He made them pick up every cow panel, dry or wet, and move it to another field with a wheelbarrow.
Perfect.
Jerry many times said to me, Aunt Virginia, I'll never forget that. I never sweat so in my life. I says, honey, it wasn't to make you sweat, it's to make you live.
It was so you wouldn't forget.
I told, you snoring? I told Red, that was real good thinking of both of you guys to move those cow pancakes from winter dry.
You.
And that's the story of my little Jimmy.
Sweet guy. Actually, all of Blanche's family, or quite a number of them, they have a place at the beach up the road Allen's on, and they all commute back and forth between Janie's lot on the water and their place by golf cart.
That's Janie's golf cart.
Yeah.
And they're so good to me. They pick me up wherever they're going. And when I turned 80, here they come in the golf cart, 2 of Howard and one of the boys, in this golf cart, all pink ribbons and saying, happy 80th and everything.
Isn't that sweet?
And I made dinner for them, and so we take turns making dinners, and I didn't think a thing about them thinking it was my birthday. Well, that would never slip by Jenny, and the golf cart pulled up, and I had a huge roast in it, and potatoes and a big pot of mixed vegetables from the garden here, and I made 3 pies. There was blackberry and peanut butter chocolate cream and a raisin cream. Howard says, I don't think it's going to fit on the back, and he worked it so he got all across the back. Every house on the rest of the drive up there said, Meals on Wheels.
That would have been the best Meals on Wheels
And
ever.
after they said Meals on Wheels, they thought, happy birthday.
They have a wonderful time, that whole gang.
The whole bunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we had our 100-year reunion of the Thompson family, of course we had our Meikles. There was 3 or 4 good Canadian friends. There was some of the Canadian campers too. But now I'd like to tell you one story on Mr. Meikle, Alf,
Well,
Okay.
my father.
your father.
Yeah.
And Ray and I were living.
It's got 1 bar on the battery. I want it to last.
Well, wait, you want to pause and
Yeah.
Plug it in?
I'll plug it in because I don't want it to go off. But this has got to be
in
a
the
good
middle?
story.
We got to keep this one. We're going to write it down. Verbatim.